My name is Kevin Johnson. My mother raised me single-handedly, and I only know what my dad looks like from pictures. He got addicted to gambling before I was born, and it became too much for my mom, so she divorced him. Mom worked hard to raise me. She would leave early in the morning and come back late at night, and I couldn't muster the courage to tell her that I was being bullied in elementary school. Every day, I was bullied by David, a guy who's known by everyone in town and whose father runs several businesses. He would scribble on my textbooks and shout insults at me. Being timid, I couldn't stand up to the bullying from David and just endured it quietly. The reason I could withstand David's bullying was because of my childhood friend, Susan. Susan was the epitome of studiousness, always wearing her hair in braided pigtails, donning thick glasses, and engrossed in a book. And every day on our way home, she would catch up to me and say with tears in her eyes, "I'm sorry I couldn't help you." Walking home with Susan was the happiest time for me. We'd talk about our favorite books and about our teachers. It was a time so special that it made me forget about the bullying at school. One day, after parting ways with Susan, I returned home to find my usually working mom sitting in a dark room.
"Welcome home,"
she said with a look of sheer exhaustion. The tension in the air made my voice tremble. "What's wrong?"
"I'm sorry. I'm just really tired."
The company where my mom worked was what you'd call a toxic workplace. Every day, Mom was at her wit's end, being yelled at by her boss and forced to do unpaid overtime.
"Kevin, listen. I'm thinking of moving back to our family home. You remember Grandpa and Grandma have that farm, right? I want to help out there and start our life anew. We'll have to move from here, and it'll be quite rural. But can you forgive me for making this decision?"
I was taken aback by my mom's teary-eyed proposal. I was sad about not seeing Susan anymore, but the idea of going to school without having to see David's face was appealing. Besides, I couldn't possibly ask my exhausted mom to keep working at her current job. "Mom, it's okay. Let's move to Grandpa and Grandma's place. I'll help out the farm too."
"Thank you, and I'm sorry, Kevin."
Holding back tears, my mom embraced me, while all I could think about was Susan. The moving preparations began right away. Mom quit her job, and it was decided I'd be transferring schools. The teacher allowed me to tell everyone about the moving when I felt it was right, and I thought I had to tell Susan first. On the usual way home, carrying a backpack filled with textbooks that had been scribbled, I heard the familiar voice of Susan calling out, "Kevin."
Did anything bad happen today? Are you okay?
"I'm fine. I didn't get hurt or anything."
That's good.
Behind her thick glasses, Susan's eyes lit up with a smile. I need to tell her about moving. I need to do it quickly. Even though I thought this, it was hard to bring it up. Finally, we reached the usual crossroad where we part ways, and Susan waved as she always did.
See you tomorrow, Kevin.
"Wait, Susan." She stopped, looking puzzled. I finally mustered up the courage and told Susan, "You know, I'm gonna be moving to my grandparents' place in the countryside, so we won't be able to see each other soon. I won't be able to see Susan anymore." With that thought, the words just slipped out of my mouth. "Can we write letters to each other, so maybe we can meet again someday?" Feeling embarrassed, I looked down, but Susan rushed over to me. Holding my hand, she nodded vigorously.
Definitely right. I promise I'll write back. I want to see you again, Kevin.
Tears glistened in Susan's eyes. Seeing Susan saddened by our parting made me so emotional that I felt tears coming. We both teared up as we promised to stay in touch through letters, and then Susan and I went our separate ways. When my transfer was announced at school, David looked uninterested, and Susan was in tears. After moving to the countryside, I started helping out on my grandparents' farm with my mom. I didn't have the money for college, so after high school, I got really into farming. Helping out on the farm was fun, and the taste of the vegetables we grew always amazed me. Above all, seeing my mom regain her health and spirits was the best thing for me. I kept in touch with Susan through our casual letters. Sometimes, when I sent her vegetables from the farm, she'd send back homemade treats. Though I wanted to see her, a decade passed without ever mentioning it in my letters. I got used to helping on the farm and began studying agriculture. My grandparents planned to leave the farm to me, and I was living fulfilling days. Amidst this busy yet peaceful life, a letter arrived. It wasn't from Susan, but invitation to an elementary school reunion. The moment I saw the invitation, David's face flashed in my mind. Though it brought back some unpleasant memories, the hope of possibly seeing Susan again made my heart swell, and so I accepted the invitation. The day of the reunion, it was held in a fancy hotel ballroom in the city. I had to wear a formal suit, which I wasn't used to, so I felt rather awkward. What if Susan sees me like this and is disappointed? But if I get to see her, I'd be so happy. I wonder what kind of person she's become. With a mix of anxiety and anticipation in my mind as I walked into the venue, the first thing that caught my eye was David. His face was handsome, and though David was a bully, he was always surrounded by people. This hadn't changed since elementary school, and there were always many people around David. I sneakily sat in a corner of the venue trying to find Susan without being noticed by David. Disappointed by not seeing Susan anywhere, I suddenly heard a teasing voice. "Hey, is that you, Kevin?" David approached and peered into my face.
Wow, it really is Kevin. How've you been? I've missed picking on you.
I forced a smile at David, who had a mean grin on his face. He probably missed having someone to bully. David's eyes were like that of a child who just got a new toy.
So, what have you been up to? My dad gave me one of his companies, and now I'm the CEO. It's tough work, especially managing all the employees. Looks like you haven't been through such hardships, huh?
Well, I've been farming.
Farming? Seriously, you're a farmer now?
With David's loud exclamation, a crowd began to gather around us. I was too scared to lift my face. The thought of being ridiculed for my beloved farming was too much to bear.
Farming's for po folks. I could never do that. Aren't there bugs? Too gross for me.
I wanted to block out David's taunting laughter, but feeling like he was mocking not just my profession but my family too, anger welled up inside me. "You don't eat vegetables."
Huh.
"If there were no farmers, you wouldn't have vegetables to eat," I retorted with a shaky voice. Back in elementary school, I never stood up to David, but now it seemed to annoy him that I was fighting back. Just as David was about to say something, the door of the hall suddenly opened.
Sorry I'm late.
The tense atmosphere in the room instantly changed as a beautiful woman entered. The beautiful woman, with her gorgeous long hair tied back, quickly brightened up and rushed towards David and me. David greeted her with a warm smile and opened his arms slightly, welcoming her.
Who's she? I don't remember someone that pretty in our school.
Passing by the confident David, the beautiful woman took my hand. I recognized the touch immediately. Susan.
Yes, I've missed you, Kevin.
I was dumbfounded that Susan, with whom I had only communicated through letters, had turned out to be so stunning. As if to suppress the growing joy of our reunion, David exclaimed, "No way."
Susan, is that really you? You've become so beautiful. I didn't recognize you. What are you doing these days?
I work at the front desk of this hotel. I got held up with some work and was running late.
Oh, then you know my dad's company is one of this hotel's clients. The reason we got to have our reunion in such a nice place is thanks to me. If I had known you were working here, I would have come to this hotel way sooner.
As David bragged, Susan tightened her grip on my hand without replying.
Hey, Kevin, I have someone I want you to meet.
Before I could catch up with this sudden turn of events, David exclaimed in a disgruntled voice, "Hey."
Susan, don't waste your time with him. Do you know what this guy's doing now? He's a farmer. A mucky, uncool job. In contrast, I'm a young CEO with a lot of money. You'd have a much better time with me.
David, are you unaware of what Kevin is currently doing?
Huh, I told you, he's a farmer.
David looked utterly confused.
You're mistaken. While Kevin is helping out on a farm, he's also attending grad school at New York University, studying agriculture in depth.
What?
David's exclamation of surprise was echoed by murmurs from those around. Before I could intervene, Susan began explaining my situation. I had developed a passion for farming while helping out my grandparents on their farm, with a growing desire to cultivate better crops and improve the agriculture industry. I worked hard and got admitted to NYU. From this year, I have been delving deeper into my agricultural studies at the graduate level. Hearing all this from Susan, David was taken aback. Ignoring David's stunned expression, Susan urged me to stand up from my chair.
Kevin, I told you that there's someone I want you to meet. Brace yourself.
As she smiled warmly, she led me towards the door and called for the hotel manager. When the door opened and the manager walked in, I was lost for words. Though he had aged, there was no doubt that face was the same one I saw in the photo, unmistakably my dad's. "Is that you, Dad?"
Kevin, you've grown up so well.
The manager, "No, my dad," said with a choked-up voice. According to Susan, Dad often talked about his estranged son. After they got divorced, Dad, who was full of regret at the time, started to work at a hotel and worked hard. His dedication was recognized, and he became a manager. Susan heard stories about Dad's son and realized it was me setting up this reunion.
I'm sorry for not being there for you all these years. I wasn't sure if I should face you, but Susan convinced me. I'm glad to see you.
I wanted to meet you too, Dad. I bet Mom would love to see you. So, if you're up for it, come visit our farm sometime. I tried to hide it, but I always felt the void of not having a father. Whenever Mom shared memories of Dad, she seemed lonely. I think if Dad hadn't gotten caught up in gambling, Mom would have wanted to be with him forever. At my invitation, Dad smiled and said thank you. Amidst the applause for the emotional reunion at the reunion venue, Dad walked over to a stunned David.
You must be Mr. Johnson's son. The staff here informed me about all of your actions and words.
Huh.
If someone like you is going to take over, I have to reconsider our dealings with Mr. Johnson's company. I'll be sure to discuss today's events with your father in detail.
David, looking pale as a ghost at these words, quickly apologized.
I'm so sorry.
Shouting his apology, David hastily left the reunion. Seeing him retreat like that was laughable, considering how everyone had been afraid of such a guy before. This reunion inspired me to ask Susan out on a date, and we began dating shortly after. A few years later, against all odds, I proposed to my first love, Susan, and we got married. After the reunion, on my insistence, my dad visited the farm. My mom was initially surprised, but she's grown to accept the changed man he's become. Lately, they've been spending more time together, and I am secretly hoping that they will remarry. As for David, I heard through the grapevine that he ran the company he inherited from his father into the ground due to his power tripping and lack of preparation. Now, he's undergoing strict training as the heir under his father. I know that with dedication, anything can bear fruit, just like the effort put into growing tasty vegetables. I sincerely hope that David's efforts will one day pay off, and I'm cheering him on from afar.